I love books. When I was a kid, I say now as an adult that when I was a kid, I used to eat books. I literally gobbled them up. I couldn't get enough of it. I loved the experience. I loved traveling the universe. I loved learning the language and the words, which maybe I couldn't pronounce them, but I knew how to use them. And so that legacy of learning is something that I love. And proceeds, percentage of purchases from tonight do go to the literacy program that Indy Reads supports. And so this is also a very cool thing. So we are really doubling up on the good things that we're doing with this. So I'm here tonight to present my newly published book called Jacob. And I want to give you first a little bit of a story about the story itself. And the cool thing is it lets me go back a little bit in time. So one of the first things I did was I got out my old red American Tourister suitcase, which I bought as a freshman in college, age 17 going on 18. And in that suitcase, I have old stories and things that I would have either handwritten on paper or typed or whatever. Amongst those things is my first diary that I was given when I was in 5th grade. And so I have not read it. I don't intend to read it, and Hannah has already said that she wants to read it. I'm like, really? It's probably going to be really boring. But what happens is you love to write, and you love to put yourself on paper, your thoughts, and you love to vent onto paper. And so longer entries meant putting a piece of paper in, filling up a second year, maybe meant putting another piece of paper in there. And since then, I grew onto other diaries. In fact, one I think still has the lock intact on it. And then I progressed to my day planners, which, if you know me, you've probably seen me walk around with my day planner. I have another black leather one that's in shreds. And so the inserts that I have go back at least 20 years. And going back to the origins of my story, Jacob, required me to look this one up because I had a good idea. It was back in 2014 when the seed of a thought was planted. And to that end, I want to say that my youngest sister acts with a theater group in Chicago, and they actually do a Christmas carol. So, again, according to the day planner, we had attended the show. We've now seen it several times, and I am a total Christmas junkie. And by that I mean specifically the Christmas spirit. And the way I want to define that is a very all-encompassing definition. It has to do when the excitement and pleasure and joy of giving exceeds the idea or the pleasure or the notion of getting. It's anything that you do that all of a sudden it becomes so exciting to give and to do for someone else. I think that is what I would call the Christmas spirit. It's what we call the holiday spirit. I think it's probably the spirit of anything good that we want to do. And the fun thing is when you write a book, you can insert little nuggets of thoughts into the book like that. So this phrase actually does occur in my book. And going to, the cool thing is too, then now that I use a computer, I can also see when I first saved a document. So I know that I saved an electronic document of the poem Jacob, which is how it all started, back on December 1 of 2014. And several days later, and it's interesting because I know exactly, I can refer to this and I know what happened. I submitted my poem to Writer's Almanac, which you know in the morning on NPR you would hear Garrison Keillor do his reading, and he would do a history, like a biography, and then he would read a bit of poetry. And if you're a writer, different things become Mecca. You know, depending on what we're doing in life, different things resemble Mecca. And to me, it'd be like, oh my God, to have my poem read by Garrison Keillor on NPR in the morning would be so cool. Well, I submitted the poem, and I heard back from them, and on this day, it says they are considering doing Jacob. Well, they didn't do Jacob. But I will tell you this, I remember this was a snowy winter's day, and I was excited about this possibility. I was also Christmas shopping, and my oldest son was already living far away. This might have been when he was still a Marine and very far away, and getting ready for the holidays. And I was just in this happy mood. I was shopping for the kids. It was snowing, it was cold, and so all of my holiday junkie sensibilities came together, and the poem came together as a story in my head. And I remember it coming together in my head as I was leaving the mall, driving in the car, and the snow is blowing against the windshield. And it was such a moving experience. I mean, I was crying, and I think I even called my husband to tell him, I have this story idea. So this would have been December 12th, and on the 14th, I have a document saved, and I noted it in my journal that I had written the first draft of Jacob, and it was at that point a 23-page document. So fast forward to this morning, I just want to add a little anecdote. I had my tote bags all prepared, and my vintage, literally, diary was in its Ziploc bag on the floor in the bag, and I'm having coffee and toast, and I hear a crinkling sound, and my beloved dog Mav is snuffling through, and he has consumed Javiana's flip-flops, and he has also chewed through, you know, the dog ate my homework story. Well, my dog almost got my diary this morning.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, no, good boy. You know, Mav thinks his name is no, good boy. So we fast forward to the years that I had the privilege of blogging for Huffington Post. And so that was not quite 5 years long, and it was a position that I was, it was like literally an account I was offered as the result of a story search that Rita Wilson did in tandem with Shelley Emling, who was an editor there back in the day. And I began to write, sometimes it was a story, mostly it was a topical item, and often as the years progressed, it was to support the things that I supported, whether it was the Opera or Fashion Art Society, and also the Vonnegut Library. So life gets in the way of doing the things that we really love best sometimes, especially when it's something like writing, which is a real indulgence, because you go so deep into your headspace. It's not a social thing. It takes you away from everyone, even though you are 2 inches away from everyone. And but I knew I needed to keep reworking the manuscript, because also when you write late at night, sometimes you're like, what did I write? And giving myself the deadline, as Charles Dickens did, which when he first published A Christmas Carol back in 1843, it was published also in staves or chapters in a periodical. Then it came together as a book. And then it really literally exploded. It changed society. It changed him and his life. He is one of my idols because of the sensibilities that he created in people to think about others. And so what I did was I set myself a goal and a deadline, and that would be that starting on St. Nicholas Day, which is December 5, or rather the 6th, we put our stockings out on the 5th, is just what I grew up doing. I put my first stave at Huffington Post, and it was a way to force me to review each chapter, get it into some decent fashion, and share it. And so that let me do sort of a once through on the manuscript, and it was still not in its final form. But that was a really great step, and it was an important step. And Huffington Post, you know how things grow, they change ownership, they get bought out by always bigger entities. It is now not what it was when it began, and at the point early in 18, the independent blogger accounts were simply shut down. But the really cool thing was, the Jacob thing was the last project that I did for that account. And during that last year, I also made it an absolute goal to write other people's stories. So that was really a great concluding year for that. As always though, when some door like that closes a little bit, I mean, my articles are still out there, then the other window opens for me. It was a window to, let's think about what it is that I can do and what I can do with it. So we come forward in time a little bit, and with the support of my husband Mike, especially, who is a fellow creative contributor, and we are together because we love creativity, we love living our art and our artfulness and having fun with it. We were talking about taking this leap of faith and self-publishing Jacob. And I'm looking through Instagram, so now we are incorporating social media into the story. And I see a post by Adam Ohlers, and Adam Ohlers is a British artist who I do not know personally, but for the fact that we are pen pals. And we also own an illustration of his. We've had it a few years. It's a beautiful piece with butterfly wings surrounding a girl's face and maple leaves, and it's so intricate. So I happened upon his picture that he posted, and it was a medallion like this featuring a Scrooge and a Marley, and I'm like, there's my illustrator. That's what we're gonna do, because I can draw too. I've got a lot of experience with that, but I wanted somebody else to contribute their 100%, because then you get 200% you're working with. And so I sent a manuscript to Adam, and he loved it, and he agreed to do that. And the result are these works of art that he's done. These are the originals. And the illustrations occur in black and white in the book. This is the little piece, if you might recall, in older print books, you'll see a beautiful little medallion, and it occurs again and again to mark a chapter or to mark a space. And so that's how I've utilized it, because I wanted my book to resemble the older volumes that I have grown to love so much, whether it's as a collector or something that I read as a little girl. And what I want to show you is, this is the book Jacob, which some of you already have in your hands. The inspiration for this was the 1843 edition that Charles Dickens put out. His book of A Christmas Carol is in red. There is a medallion. Now, Adam Ohlers drew a medallion for me, and he hand drew the title and my name, and IBJ Custom Publishing then created the cover for this. And so my goal was, I want it to be as pretty lying idly on a table as it would be if you are reading it and becoming absorbed in the story. And I hope I sell all 1,000 copies, because I already see some tweaks I want to make. And that's how that goes. So what I'd like to do then is start a little bit of the reading. And afterwards, if time and inclination permit, I'd love to open it up to some questions, and we can talk about creativity or the writing process or the books themselves. One of the things that I'd like to do is start out with Charles Dickens' own description of Jacob Marley. I think that would be a good reference point to start with, don't you? The same face. And of course, Jacob Marley has now just appeared in the bedchamber of Ebenezer Scrooge. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling, like his pigtail and his coat skirts and the hair on his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and it made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. And with that, I'll have another sip of water. You know, we attended the cabaret on Friday night, and these awesome people, and the guy that we saw was drinking his water from a water bottle, and I thought, you know what, I need a pretty cup. So when starting a book, I think it makes sense to start at the beginning. And so what I'm going to do is skip about a little bit in my introduction. This book is crafted to appear to any reader as a book within a book. And so I will introduce my story, and then it unfolds from there. Have you ever wondered, what about poor old Jacob Marley? I have, always, and I literally always have. I've always wondered about him. Didn't he always seem so sad? I've always thought of Ebenezer's old friend as something of an unsung hero for all his epic faults, for all his eternal suffering. If you share this sentimentality about Jacob, then this story is for you too. What seems ages ago, I spent my junior undergraduate year in Germany as an exchange student. During that year, I had the good fortune to travel throughout Europe, living and learning in the way only students seem to manage it, with that enviable, penniless panache. I spent the holidays between semesters in Berlin, where I came upon an antique cloth-bound book entitled Jacob, a denouement in 1 act, which just might be this lit-loving scavenger's find of a lifetime. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to a diary entry, and this one is dated December 16. Well, I found an old folio, oversized, all stained and soft as fabric. It was decorated with the gorgeous postcard, which justified the bio by itself, depicting a Christkindlmarkt, and that's a Christmas market. Pretty sure it's the Christmas market square in Nuremberg, and instead of a binding, the sheets are tied with a brown ribbon, yellow back in its day. Confession, sort of. I did something kind of sneaky. Inside the folio, which contained gorgeous pages of old sheet music, there was a book. Small, poorly bound, homemade looking, with a fabric cover in super faded green. The the Raggedy Book is some kind of Christmas story. There's holly on its cover, pretty little motif. It's called Jacob. Well, I left the booklet inside the folio, where I swear it had been all along. I didn't do anything, say anything. I just handed over the folio and asked the guy the price. €5, he said. Okay, I paid for the books, and left. I think that Raggedy Book was supposed to go, well, to the hostel, home with me, you know, like a puppy. I'll give it a good home, I promise. This entry is dated 12/17. Gotta run, but gotta say, update. Yes, the story is a Christmas story. It's about Jacob, as in Jacob Marley. Scrooge's Marley. Did I already say it's in English? Well, it is, and in an older style English, milady. Rather dated, but really lovely. I can just hear the voices speaking, as if from some deep space alternate universe. So, but for the terrible condition of the book, the pages are frail and they smell kind of bad, I will have to store this one in wrapping just to hold it together. At least what I can decipher from the print, some I might have to guess as I go. I will be able to read it, no problem. Nice that it's in me native tongue, matey, though old world. What I need to do is transcribe the text as I read into an e-document, which will be a perfect project for whenever I find myself a set of free and quiet hours. Whenever. Ha, who am I kidding? I hereby promise to get around to it for project transcription, the Jacob Project. How nice to now have a laptop computer for this. It sure beats the sweet old baby blue Smith Corona I had years ago, which, though that thing had miles of sentences on it, was nothing compared to little machines with memory. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to fast forward to the book that I had found in that other folio. And it's called Jacob, a denouement in one act. What I'd like to do is I'd like to read which I found on its first page. Dedication. For you, my dearest little Nicky, who thought to ask, whatever happened to poor little Jacob Marley? A denouement in one act, so that you may better sleep, duly consoled, through any long winter's night. There's a page here that describes the cast of characters, and there's an introduction with the scene description. Scene. The curtain rises on the closing scene of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Surrounded by celebrating Cratchit family members, a jubilant Ebenezer Scrooge takes Tiny Tim up into his arms. Carolers wander about to depict old London city street activities, reciting the closing lines of the Dickens story as taken from the original text. Cast members alternating now speak. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Now the scene description. The lights fade to black. As the curtain lowers, one cast member, elegantly dressed and poised, extracts himself from the chorus, and he approaches the audience. He is, as yet unknown to the audience, the adult Tim Cratchit.
Better than his word. You know the story. You, my friends, are here to revisit and listen, as the spirits did back then, and will doubtless do again, when least expected, but when most needed, to this great tale. You are here to honor and invite back into your hearts a story so known and loved, it has woven itself into the very fabric of our lives. And what illuminates today, as it did back then, the darkest slice of a midnight hour, is no doubt what has also brought you here, before me, now. When night outweighs the day and time's passages are steeped in cold, man yearns for that which invokes warmth and light and love. What we seek comes in many forms, be it a liberating truth, be it restful solitude, be it some small instance in which the giving supersedes the taking. Indeed, good want places me here before you as well to introduce a small aside, a denouement, if you will, of something intended to shed light upon what I warrant not a few of you have at some point asked. What about poor old Jacob Marley? Let once more the whispering shivers and ghostly specters haunt us onto a better path. As we aspire to what is best in all of us, let us employ, for a second time, the dark to illuminate the light. There, look upon Jacob Marley, who, yes indeed, is dead. Dead as a doornail.
Back to the scene description. A compact room, both a bedchamber and an office. Monochromatic in shades of blue and gray. The space is dimly and mysteriously lit to evoke endless night, a standstill of time. The only light comes from a lamp situated upon a desk. Coins are stacked upon the desk. There is a fireplace, but no fire. There is a daybed, rendered so as to appear comfortless and unsleepable. Tattered curtains hang at the window. There is an ornate and massive wardrobe with double doors at center stage. Rubbish is strewn about the floor. The room's entry door is at stage right. Behind the stage left wall, there is a void cloaked in darkness. The door opens. Slowly, smoothly, and without any sound. A vastly tall apparition, dressed in black with a hood covering its head and face, shrouded, slowly, smoothly enters as if afloat. It carries a sigh. This is the ghost of Christmas yet to come. The ghost reaches the center of the room. Suddenly, you'll have to bite a lip to find out.